I'm singing on a stage, just singing on a stage. I have an umbrella for no reason but to sing.
And so why did the chicken cross the road? Because it was exactly where he needed to be.
Ta-da!
To be or not to be? That is the question.
Are you ready to rock and roll?
Hey kids, how you guys doing? I hope you're doing great. You know, I have spent the majority of my life, not just as an adult, but even as a kid, on a stage. Maybe not one like this,
Maybe not exactly in the capacity of what you just saw.
but on a stage, performing, doing a lot of different things. Anything from,
Singing and dancing?
not my favorite, live stunt shows, talking, preaching, teaching, and it's done on stages.
Stages like this? Smaller stages, bigger stages, outdoor stages, indoor stages?
All types of stages. You guys may have heard this saying before, all the world's a stage and the men and women are merely players. What it's saying is that the entire world is a performance, that everybody just performs, that we may be something to somebody and something else to somebody else. We're all actors. I don't believe that.
I believe that that's not who God intended us to be.
Now, like you can see, this here is a stage, and all the amazing things, though, that come up on the stage that you would see in
A performance, a show, a concert, or whatever.
There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that you wouldn't even know. The stuff that goes on behind the scenes is more important than what's on the stage, because without what goes on behind the scenes, nothing on the stage would come to pass. It wouldn't happen. That's the same way with our lives. You see, what's going on behind the scenes, what's going on in places that people don't see, that we don't allow people into, affects what goes on the stage. I did live performances for years and years and years and years, and there were times where stuff went on backstage that was just,
Terrible. Mistakes, problems, issues, injuries, all this type of stuff.
but on the stage, you would never know it.
When you come out on the stage to perform, you want to always put your best foot forward. You always want everybody to think that there's nothing wrong, that everything's working perfectly. I mean, how many times have you bumped into somebody or seen somebody that you know, that you love, that cares about you, and they say, hey, how are you doing? And the world is falling apart in your eyes. Everything is going bad. Everything's going wrong. And what do you answer? You say,
Fine.
And that might be an opportunity that God has given you to have somebody speak into your life, somebody to help you out, somebody to come along and guide you.
there was a time that I was in a store and the girl working the counter, you could see she was having a rough day. And I said, hey, how's it going? And she looked up and she said,
Fine.
And I said, honestly, are you really doing fine? And she said, no. She said, I'm sick. Everybody else called in. I'm the only person working here today. And she said, this is one of my 2 jobs. After I leave here, I have another job. Plus, I'm going to school. I'm thinking, this is exactly the moment that God placed me here. She wasn't just putting on the happy face and performing. She allowed me to see behind the scenes. In fact, I'm going to allow you guys to see behind the scenes right now.
here we are. Behind the scenes of the stage at the church here. Super impressive, isn't it? Boxes of stuff, things back here, people running all over.
Okay, there aren't really people running all over. Sometimes before a show, before a performance, before Sunday morning worship service, there could be people running around back here trying to get things going, make things ready, prepare, and get it all good. So on the stage, it looks wonderful. It looks perfect.
Now, like I was saying about that girl at the store, she allowed me to see kind of what was going on behind the scenes of her life. And it gave me an opportunity to say, can I pray for you? Which she looked up at me a little shocked. And she said, yeah. And so even though there was a line of people there, and I'm sure they were all really wanting to go through the line, and I'd been in the line for a lot longer than I wanted to, I knew that God placed me there for a certain reason, a certain purpose. So I prayed for her. I prayed that she'd be healed. I prayed that'd be a good day for her. She smiled. For the first time, the entire time I was at the store, I saw her smile. And you could see and feel like something had been lifted off of her, and she had been relieved.
That is the power that God has given us to help other people. Sometimes the backstage area can be full of disaster. Sometimes the backstage area is quiet and peaceful. But eventually, if it's a disaster backstage, you're going to see the disaster on stage, no matter how good you are at performing.
Trust me, I know.
People are going to eventually see what's going on backstage by how you are on stage.
Let me just put this into a scriptural point of view, okay?
Let's take a look at this scripture here.
Luke.
8 verse 17. What is hidden will be seen, and what is out of sight will be brought into the open and made known.
Eventually, it's going to catch up to us. Whatever's in the back, whatever's in our minds and our hearts, whatever we're trying to hide deep, whether it's good or bad, whatever we don't want to allow people to see, it's going to come out.
I'm not saying that any person that walks up to you and says, hey, how you doing there, buddy? You have to give your whole life story and pour out to me. Oh, when I was 3 years old, I was spanked because I told my parents no. And then when I was 4, I didn't know. I'm not talking about that. Don't be like Chunk from Goonies.
If you don't know the reference, ask your parents. They probably do.
You don't need to tell them everything. In fact, sometimes you can just say,
I'm fine.
depending on who the person is. But if God's really been tugging on your heart and saying, you really need to talk to somebody, there's somebody that wants to pour into your life.
You really feel like you need to, and the person comes in, it's somebody that you trust, somebody you know, somebody you love, a parent, a sibling, pastor, somebody who you know generally loves you and cares for you, and they say, hey, how are you doing?
If you're not doing good, if behind the scenes, if backstage is not good, let them know. Don't just put on the performance and say,
I'm doing dandy, yes I am.
don't do that.
But also don't go, the world is falling apart. I mean, unless you really have to.
But be yourself, be real, be honest, because eventually God's going to help flush out that stuff, clean up your backstage area, make sure that everything is going well so that the performance outside is awesome. It's exactly what's going on behind the scenes, backstage.
All right, kids, that's all I have for you this week.
I hope you have a wonderful, fantastic week.
See, that right there, that's why I don't sing on stage.
Love you guys. God bless.